I now want to look at, if I may, at three judicial or quasi-judicial rulings by these courts. And I want to look first at the case of genocide initiated against Israel by South Africa in the International Court of Justice in December 2023, and the interim rulings in that case by the International Court of Justice in January, March, and May of 2024. Now, in this case was launched by South Africa, alleging that Israel was in breach of the 1948 Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide. Now, I can't say I know very much about that genocide. Ken, can you just tell us a little bit about that convention?
Yes, well, the convention, in essence, should be understood as requiring two elements to the crime of genocide. One having to do with acts, the other having to do with intention. Now, the acts are either killing or, for our purposes, creating conditions that are designed to cause significant loss of life. And the required intent is the intent to destroy in whole or in part a racial, religious, national, or ethnic group. And so we have to look at each of those two elements of the crime in assessing whether Israel is committing the crime of genocide in Gaza.
Now, when this came before the court in the first instance, Judge Barak, ad hoc Judge Barak, the former president of the Supreme Court of Israel, pointed out, he said, hang on, he said, the drafters of the Genocide Convention said that the infliction of losses, even heavy losses, on the civilian population in the course of the operations of war does not, as a rule, constitute genocide. In modern war, belligerents normally destroy factories, communication, buildings. Civilian population suffers more or less severe losses. He said that this is just not genocide because it's not aimed at an ethnic group as such. It is trying to exterminate the actual combatants who are presenting Israel with an existential threat. So how can this be done? How can this be done under genocide? That's what I would like to ask, please.
All right. Well, I mean, first, let me just make clear that the focus on genocide is just really one of the crimes at issue. And we sometimes allow the discussion of genocide to overwhelm talk of other concerns. But indeed, Israel is also committing extensive war crimes and crimes against humanity. So even if we were to take genocide off the table, these are very serious crimes. And indeed, they are the subject of the International Criminal Court charges, which we'll get to in a bit.
Yes.
But with respect to genocide, it's a mistake to say that Israel is just fighting Hamas. If that's all it was doing, if it was doing everything it could to target Hamas and to spare civilians, no one would have any problem. But what the Netanyahu government has chosen to do is to fight Hamas with gross indifference to Palestinian civilian lives. And that, has given rise to war crimes, but it also is why we're talking about genocide.
Ken, sorry. So if the position were that Israel was trying to, as it were, completely destroy Hamas and was indifferent to the suffering of the Gaza population, does that constitute genocide?
Well, again, it comes down to the question of intent. In other words, the acts being committed are clearly sufficient to find genocidal acts. If you just look at the numbers killed, civilians killed probably on the order of, let's say, conservatively speaking, 28,000. That's substantially more than the 8,000 killed in Srebrenica, where the International Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia found genocide. If you look at, conditions of life, the Israeli obstruction of humanitarian aid, food, medicine, and the like into Gaza has been so substantial that that's given rise to the International Criminal Court charges. So, so they're getting, yeah. Yeah, no, the reason I said yes. Yeah, no, that's why I gave the number 28, just as a conservative number. In other words, the 43,000 includes combatants. So let's say a third of the people killed have been combatants. and the remainder are civilians. So that's
But
why I came up with that number. Whether it's 26 or 28 or 29 doesn't matter for the purpose of this
But
lesson.
can I also make this point on behalf of, can I make this point on what I think a lot of Israelis would think? I mean, to accuse Israel of all countries of genocide is an obscene provocation when, as you've just pointed out yourself, it could be just as easily done under the international humanitarian laws of war.
Well, the issue is not, is it a provocation? The issue is whether Israel's committing it. And clearly one can commit war crimes and crimes against humanity and also genocide. And that's what Israel is accused of. And so, when people look at the situation in Gaza, the acts are not really the issue. I mean, the acts are sufficient for a charge of genocide by anybody's account. It comes down to the question of genocidal intent. And here, the International Court of Justice's jurisprudence is actually fairly conservative. And let me explain why. If the issue is proving intent by virtue of statements by senior government officials, there have been some. For example, President Herzog, who said, in essence, there are no uninvolved civilians, kind of fair game to go after the entire population. Or at the time, the defense minister Gallant, who says that everybody in Gaza, and this is discussing the siege, which applied to everybody, is a human animal. So when you have the most senior officials talking in these terms, those are genocidal terms. But what Israel says is, oh, but there have been lots of contrary statements, and there are all the obligatory deferences to the Geneva Conventions and the like. So that's why most people look to also infer genocide from the conduct. Why would you starve the entire population if
Well,
not
I do agree
create?
that the starvation policy is extremely concerning, but
Yeah.
I'd just like to just finish on this point here. I mean, during the Second World War, we claimed to lay Germany waste. That's what Harris said. We destroyed Dresden, we destroyed Hamburg, but it wasn't genocidal. We were just trying to defeat the Germans.
Well, first of all, standards have changed. In other words, the Geneva Conventions of 1949 didn't even exist at the
Yeah.
time of World War. So, one thing that Netanyahu says is, well, look at Dresden. Why are you blaming me for Gaza? That's
Yeah.
totally not a defense. The standards are different now. The Genocide Convention came to force after the Second World War.